They said the world would end when I turned 18. My name is Ava. I live in Bristol, in a small flat above a bookshop. I have a cat called Marx, named after the first book I read after escaping. Not because I believe in ideology, but because it was the first book I wasn't banned from. My family belonged to a group called the Path of Light. Not a church, not a religion, but something in between. The leader was Brother Eli, a man with a cold gaze and a voice like something out of an old radio. We lived in a remote house. No social media, no news, no secular books. We were taught from childhood. The world is a trap. The government is the devil. Love is weakness. And 18 is the day of judgment. What will happen? I asked at 12. Then the gates will open, said Brother Eli. And those who believed will rise. Those who didn't will remain in the dark. And if I'm 18 and the world doesn't end, then you didn't believe hard enough. I did. For a long time. I read their texts. I prayed 3 times a day. I wore gray, because colors are the scum of the world. I didn't look at boys. I didn't laugh out loud. I didn't dream. But when I turned 17, I found a book. Hidden under the floor in an old room. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. No witchcraft. No curses. But there was a story about a boy who came out of the darkness. I read it at night, under a blanket, with a flashlight. And for the first time in my life I thought, maybe another life is real. I didn't tell anyone. But I started looking. When I was washing dishes, I would overhear the elders talking about outsiders. When I was cleaning, I would look for old newspapers. One day I found a newspaper clipping, from 2017. A photo of a woman in a short skirt. The caption, top model at a show in Paris. I looked at her and thought, she's alive. And she's not in hell. A month later I found an old radio. I turned it on. I found a station. Voice. And now in the hits by Ed Sheeran, Shape of You. I froze. The music was beautiful. Not destructive. Just life. I began to dream. Not about the court. But about the city. About the cafe. About the bookstore. About what Paris looks like. But they noticed. One day Brother Eli stopped me after prayer. You have changed, he said. Your eyes are running. I believe, I answered. But you are reading the wrong thing. No. We found the book. I did not take it. Don't lie. They took me to the purification room, a small room without windows. It was cold there. I spent 3 days there. I ate once a day. I prayed every 2 hours. Their words echoed in my head. You do not believe. You are lost. You will not go to the light. On the 3rd day I said, I repent. Do you believe? Yes. Then why is your heart dark? Because I am afraid. They let me go. But they put a guard in charge. My mother now sat with me every night. So that I wouldn't be different. But I already knew. If the world exists, I want to be in it. Even if it means running away. There were 8 weeks left until my 18th birthday. They were preparing the great cleansing, the day when we would rise. Nothing could be taken. No things. No thoughts. Only faith. I began to prepare. Not for the judgment. For the escape. I collected money, the ones that were given for holy soap. I hid 37 pounds in an old shoe. I found an old road map. I found out how to get to Bristol, the nearest city with a bus station. And I waited. The night before the judgment day was rainy. Everyone was praying. So was I. But in my head, another prayer. Don't let them wake up. Let me make it. Let there be room for me outside. At 3:17 I left through the back door. Backpack with jacket, book, money, and that old newspaper. I walked 12 kilometers. In the rain. Without shoes. My feet were soaked. My jacket was wet. But I didn't stop. Not because it didn't hurt. But because I was afraid to go back. At 6:40 I reached the bus station in Bristol. I had 37 pounds. I knew only one thing. I had to keep going. To where there are people who don't pray 3 times a day. Where you can laugh. Where you can read books that are not approved by the leader. I bought a bus ticket to London. 28 pounds. I had £9 left. And an old newspaper in my pocket. The bus was full. People were talking. Listening to music. Some looked at me, at my wet hair, at my shoes without socks. But no one stopped me. No one said, you don't believe, you are lost. I sat by the window. And watched the world go by. Shops. Signal lights. Women in bright clothes. Boys hugging girls. And nowhere prayers. nowhere, fear. I didn't cry. I just looked with my eyes at what really exists. In London, I got off at Victoria Station. Around me, noise, signs, people running. I stood and didn't know where to go. I sat down on a bench. I took out a newspaper. I looked at a photo of a model. And I thought, if she can exist, I can too. An hour later, a woman came up to me. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "You're completely wet." "Yes." "Where is your family?" "Not here." "Did you run away?" I was silent. "I'm not with the police," she said. "I work at Hope Shelter, a youth shelter." "Is it safe?" "Yes." "Will they send me back?" "No. We don't put people in danger." Her name was Mrs. Carter. She didn't ask much. She just came with me on the tube. The shelter was in Southwark. Not fancy, but clean. They gave me dry clothes, food, a room, not my own, but with a door that you could close. I didn't sleep the first night, because I didn't believe it was real. That I wouldn't be called to purification. That I could just lie there and stare at the ceiling and no one would say, "You don't believe it." 2 days later, Mrs. Carter said, "You need to tell your story." "Why?" "So you wouldn't be alone. And if no one believes, we are here to believe." I told her about the path of light, about the day of judgment, about the book I found, about how they kept me in a room for 3 days. She didn't interrupt. She just said, "You're not the first. There are other girls who have escaped from clubs, from sects, from families where faith is more important than a person." A week later, I was referred to a psychologist, Miss Nguyen. "I'm not sick," I said. "I'm not saying you're sick. I want to help you understand what you've been through." And what have I been through? Control, isolation, emotional abuse. It leaves a mark. But you're not alone. I started going to her sessions. First, about fear. Then, about the fact that I can't choose food. That I'm afraid of music. That when someone screams, I tremble. That I dream about being taken back. But with each session, it became easier. I started reading. Not only Harry Potter. Books about psychology. About history. Even a novel. For the first time, I read the word love that was not associated with fear. A month later, I found a job in the coffee shop, The Page, next to the bookstore. "Why do you want to work here?" the manager asked. "Because I love books," I said. "And what are you reading?" "Right now, 1984. "Interesting choice." He smiled. "You're accepted." I worked. Paid for the courses. I learned the basics of computers. Then, library work. Once I saw a video on the internet about the path of light. There were photos, meetings, even Brother Eli. Under the video they wrote, "This is a sect. They hold people against their will." I didn't give a damn. But I wrote a comment. I was there. I escaped. I'm alive. And I'm not alone. A week later, a girl wrote to me. "I'm 16. I'm in the path. I read your comment. And for the first time I thought, maybe there's a way out." I replied, "As someone who knows, one word can save a life." Living outside the sect was harder than I thought. Not because it was good there, but because I didn't know how to be free. In the path of light, everything was clear. When to pray, what to eat, how to think, who to fear. And here, nothing. Only choice. And it was scarier than any purification room. For the first 3 months, I lived in the Hope Shelter. I had a room with another girl, Tanya, who had run away from a family belonging to another group. "They said that music is the devil," she said on the first evening. "Did you listen?" "Yes. In the toilet, on an old phone." "And what?" "It was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." We laughed, even while crying, because we understood each other without words. But the hardest thing was the ordinary things. One day, I went to the supermarket for the first time. I was standing in front of the milk shelf. There is, from a cow, soy, almond, coconut, rice, vegan, with calcium, with vanilla, with low fat. I stood for 5 minutes. I couldn't choose. Then I cried. An employee came up. "Are you okay?" "Yes, just. I didn't know there was so much milk." He smiled. "It's just milk. Choose what you like." I took soy. Not because I wanted to, but because the letter C was the first. It was my first independent choice, and it seemed huge. I worked at the Page, a coffee shop next to a bookstore. Every day people would come in, students, writers, old men with newspapers. I would learn their favorite drinks. I would memorize their names. Sometimes, stories. One day, an elderly man came up to me. "Are you new?" he asked. "Yes. I see you're taking your time." "I'm learning." "What are you learning?" "To live." He ordered a cappuccino and said, "This is the hardest part, but you're already on the right track." I didn't know if he understood what I meant, but his words stayed with me. 6 months later, I was offered a permanent job, not just washing cups, but helping organize book parties. I held my first event, about books that were banned. I read an excerpt from 1984. "Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 times 2 is 4. Then she said, "I had a different life, where 2 times 2 was what the leader said." After the event, a girl came up to me. "I heard about the path of light." "Yes," I said. "And do you ever want to go back?" "Sometimes." "Why?" "Because it was simple there. No choices. No doubts. But then I look at the book that I can open myself, at the coffee that I chose myself, at the laughter that is not forbidden. And I understand. Freedom is a choice, even when it is difficult." A year later, I was accepted to study a course in library science. "You don't have a school certificate," they said. "But I have a choice," I answered. "And a desire to learn." They thought. Then they said, "We will give you a chance." I worked. I studied. I paid for housing. And 2 years later, I got an apartment, a small, 1-room, but my own. On the first day, I put 3 things on the shelf. 1. The book, Harry Potter. 2. A photo from the graduation day. 3. An old newspaper. Once I received a letter from a girl from Scotland. "I am 17. I am in a sect. They say the world will end next year. I read your blog. And for the first time I thought, maybe I will get out." I answered, "You will get out. Not because it is easy, but because you already know. Twice 2 equals 4. 3 years after my escape, I received a letter. On paper. No sender. But I recognized the handwriting. "You ruined everything. We found your blog. People started asking. Eli's brother disappeared. Some families left. You had no right. You were chosen, but you lost your way. If you ever come back, you will be purged." I read it and didn't cry. I just put the letter on the shelf, next to the book, the newspaper, the photo, as a reminder. They still think I'm the one who needs to be purged, not the one who got out. But this letter made me wonder, how many other people are there? How many girls who read forbidden books under the covers? How many boys who believe the world is going to end because they were told to? I couldn't stay silent. I started writing. First, on a blog, about how hard it is to choose milk. How scary it is to hear music for the first time. How painful it is to be called lost. How hard it is to learn to live when you are taught to be afraid of life. A month later, I was invited to the radio station Resilience FM, a local station that tells stories of survival. "Tell me about your first day in freedom," said the host. "It was the day when I first smelled coffee, not from a prayer, but from a cup," I said. And I realized, the world is not hell. It simply exists. And it is beautiful. After the broadcast, people started writing to me. Girls, boys, even parents who realized their children live in fear. "I'm 15. I'm being kept in a house. They say I'm not ready for the world. I read your blog. Can I escape? How did you do it?" I answered honestly, "Yes, you can. There are people who will help. Right here. I won't leave you." I wasn't a psychologist, but I was the one who walked this path. And that was enough. 2 months later, I founded Bridge Out, an online platform for those fleeing sects, closed communities, families with extreme views. For now, it's just a website. With stories. With shelter contacts. With instructions. How to raise money. How to find help. How to choose the first bus. How not to be betrayed. One day, a woman came to me, Mrs. Carter, from Hope Shelter. "I read about your project," she said. "We want to support." Why? Because you don't just tell. You give a chance. And that's the most important thing. They provided a room in the shelter for consultations. We started holding meetings. Not as lectures. As conversations. People came. They told stories. They cried. A year after Bridge Out was launched, a journalist from The Guardian found me. "We want to do an article about you," she said. Why? Because your story is important. But I'm not a hero. You don't have to be a hero to save. It's enough to be the one who reached out. The article came out. Title: The Girl Who Walked Out of the End of the World. They showed me how I work, how I read letters, how I sit with the girl who ran away a week ago. After the publication, hundreds of people wrote to me, many from Great Britain, some from Germany, Canada, Australia. Someone said, "You changed my life." Asterisk. Someone, asterisk, the first time I said this to my daughter. But there were other letters. From someone who wrote on behalf of the path of light. "You have betrayed the elect. You are leading others into darkness. When the time comes, you will not come into the light. You will be excluded." I read it and said aloud, "I am already in the light, and you cannot turn it off." Today I am 24. I live in Bristol, in the same apartment that I once imagined as impossible. On the shelf are books that I am not forbidden to read. On the wall is a photo from the day of graduation. On the floor is Marx the cat, sleeping as if there was never any fear. Bridge Out is now not just a website. It is real support. We have online chat with volunteers who have escaped from cults, a hotline with psychologists, the First Step program for those who have left, the course, How to Return to the World. We do not save everyone, but we give a chance, and that is enough. One day, a girl named Nora came to me, 17 years old. She ran away from a club in Yorkshire. "I can't talk to people," she said. "I am afraid of music." "What did you like as a child?" "I don't remember." "What do you like now? When you read aloud?" "Do you want me to read?" "Yes." I read an excerpt from Little Women. She sat and looked at the fire in the fireplace. We have an electric one, but I turned on the animation. Then she said, "This is the first time I'm not afraid." "Why?" "Because you don't say that I have to believe. You just are." I nodded. And she said, "This is freedom. Not to believe in what you are told. And to have the right to simply be." A month later Nora started studying. 6 months later she read me her own poem, about how she came out of the darkness. And at that moment I understood. This is not just help. This is restoration. I haven't forgiven Brother Eli. And I don't know if I ever will. Forgiveness is not a victim's duty. It's a choice. And I'm not ready yet. But I haven't let them define my life. One day I got a letter from my mother. I read the article. "I didn't know you were in so much pain. I thought this was the way. But now I see, you're alive. And you're doing good. I can't turn back time. But I want to know how you are." I didn't answer right away. I waited a week. Then I wrote, "I'm not coming back. But I'm opening the door. Not for you. But so that you can understand. I'm not lost. I'm the one who got out. And I won't disappear." Asterisk. She didn't answer. But I know. The message got through. And when I look at myself in the mirror, I no longer see the one who held the flashlight under the blanket. I see a person who has gone through alienation, through fear, through loss, and emerged from it, not broken, but free.